Dusty's kind of getting fed up with some of the questions that are being asked to him regarding his lineup and his usage of Yainer Diaz and Martin Maldonado. The media was actually was asking him about maybe carrying a third catcher and kind of Yainer's usage. Dusty Baker seemed to get a little testy, and it basically capped off with him saying he doesn't need any help making out the lineups or setting his lineups or managing the team. The results might dictate otherwise. What do you think about Dusty and his sort of agitation, if not friction, with some of the or his bristling with some of these questions that are being tossed his way about his kind of usage of certain guys, specifically when it comes to that Yainer and Maldi dynamic?
Oh, we're venturing into theater of the absurd territory. Anyone know 3-car garage, 4-car garage, whatever Dusty has? Does he park a Gran Torino in one of those spots? As always, nobody likes being told what to do. Certainly not a 74-year-old, hey, I won the last World Series, a manager. But Dusty, in making the point that, well, Yainer Diaz has really been lousy against left-handed pitching. Okay, 55 at-bats Yainer has had against left-handed pitching. So you're going to pass your judgment that, whoa, Yainer's not very good. Then platoon him. Then he should start against every right-handed pitcher, against which Maldonado starts the week with a 489 OPS. And if you're going to gurgle about how Maldonado's been so much better than Diaz against lefties, Maldonado has 52 at-bats against lefties. So if you're going to sing Maldi's praises on 52 at-bats, you're going to bury Diaz on 55 at-bats? It's just ridiculous. At bare minimum, Diaz should start against every righty now. We'll throw in with Dusty and make it a straight platoon because you see more right-handed pitching. That would mean 65% starts for Yainer. And the element to this that really continues to agitate me is the catching component of this. Maldonado is not a good defensive catcher anymore.
Right.
Sorry. The Astros pitchers earned run average with Maldi, or Moldy if you want to get snarky, it's over 4. With Yainer Diaz going into the Cleveland series, 341. Throwing out opposition base stealers. I get it anytime he throws one out every 3 weeks or so. Whoa, machete! Well, overwhelming of the time, percentage of the time, butter knife. He's not throwing out 20%. Yainer's throwing out over 30%. Passed balls. Maldi leads the major leagues. Yainer still doesn't have one. And then you add in the offensive component that Maldonado still continues to start 70% of the time on this specific issue. It's just idiotic.
It is. Brandon and I were texting during the game the other night when they had that huge offensive explosion. And, we were talking about, man, if Yainer's your everyday catcher and the way Chaz is hitting, by the way, Chaz, second best OPS on the team behind Jordan. He continues to mash. This could remind us of the 2017 lineup with how deep it is if Yainer is your catcher. But it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. The other thing, Hunter Brown, oh, look, Yainer caught for him. He looks like Hunter Brown again. Funny how that works. So there is something to the defensive element as well. Christian Javier, on just a side note, starting to look like Christian Javier. So there are some positive signs for the Astros. But, Dusty is just, he wouldn't get all these questions if he didn't make decisions that just made people go, what? What are you talking about? What he was talking about, how outside of batting average, and not talking just against lefties, just outside of batting average, that Maldi and Diaz are pretty much the same. Yainer's slugging is 507, his OPS is 789. Maldi's is 302 slugging and a 541 OPS. That's not pretty much the same. That's not even close. There was one stat that I saw, expected slugging percentage, the top guys in the league this year. They showed the top 10. Yainer's at 8th. And they showed everybody else in the top 10. It's all all-stars. And, Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. And, the best players in baseball, Mookie Betts and Jordan. And there's Yainer in there. And then in the little comment section on this tweet, they put what that person has accomplished. And next to Yainer's, it just says backup catcher. That's what he is. So I don't know what Dusty's deal is. He went on that little monologue about how we're so quick to move on to new things. And, we do that too soon, and we got to remember who's still the man. I mean, that sounds like personal and bitter. This is like angry Pawpaw Dusty right now. So I don't know, man. But is it anything going to change? I don't think Dana Brown's going to do anything. And maybe he comes out and says Yiner needs to play more once again, but that's probably the only card he can play.
Well, and it's tough for the everyday media. You know, you don't want to be on Dusty's you-know-what list. You want to have a functional working relationship. So you're not going to say to Dusty, hey, don't try to explain calculus to me when you seem to struggle with fractions in assessing Diaz versus Maldonado, right? If you're going to have a combative, no holds barred, I don't care if he doesn't talk to me ever again, you'd say, so what exactly about mystical Maldi behind the plate has you bamboozled? Explain to me why the ERA with the pitchers is much lower with Diaz behind the plate. And Maldonado, by the pitch framing stats, is one of the worst in baseball. Yiner's not good at that either, but he's better than Maldi. Throwing out opposition base stealers, the past ball numbers. Maldonado's throws are as likely to bounce to second as they are to get to second. You know, that Yiner emailed one in the right center field the other day, that's going to happen every once in a while. But the totality of it, that Martin Maldonado is still their primary catcher, it's just so silly.
Well, and when he was asked about Diaz, he said, you know, he's the future. It's just that you have to prepare him in the present. You don't want to overwhelm him, but he's learning from Maldi, and Maldi's still the guy. So basically, this is good news for Astros opponents who are basically being awarded an automatic out every ninth batter. And while Jeremy Pena gets plugged back into the second hole and starting to, you know, produce again, this is just fixing something that didn't have to be broken to begin with. Dusty's the one who kept moving him around when the statistics showed outright that he was better in the second hole. And maybe he wouldn't be as good with Yordan out because he didn't have Yordan to protect it. But Tucker's been pretty darn good in the absence. You've messed with things that weren't broken. And so putting them back, and now that Jeremy seems to be kind of finding his way back out of it again, like it's just hard to give credit for Dusty for fixing something that he's the person who broke. And I will never root against the Astros. And if keeping Dusty Baker means the Astros will win yet another World Series, great, cool, I'm all for it. But also, if the Astros don't close the deal this season, my consolation will be that the Astros will finally move on from Dusty Baker and also by extension Martin Maldonado. And that's in no way taking away from their accomplishments or my appreciation of those compliments, specifically as they pertain to Houston. But everything runs its course. And I feel like Dusty's comments are kind of in fear of you know, his plight. You know, it's like you don't want to move on from something too early. Maybe, you know, he felt like he was in the same position, like that maybe Major League Baseball had moved on from him too early. And so maybe he's very protective of Martin Maldonado and the sun setting on his career. But everything does run its course, and you can't hold on to the past for nostalgia. Nostalgia does not win championships. Production does. And while that may sound like I'm disloyal to the players, I'm more loyal to production and results. And so it would be nice to see the team also err on that side as well.
At the risk of you getting a little upset, you better hope the trade of Corey lead us and set up Yiner as the regular and Maldonado's back as the mentor reserve next season.
That would be terrifying. Quickly, I did want to hit on one
thing.
thing.
Vasquez has been brutally bad for the Twins this year. There is that.
Yes, he has. And I wanted to bring up Chandler Rome's point. Like, what about Yiner maybe playing first base once a week? You know, because Abreu, I still think, is in the bottom 15 of OPS in all of baseball. And we've seen the defense hasn't been that great either with Abreu lately. So just to get Yiner in the lineup.
Josh, very nicely put. The defense hasn't been very good from Abreu. You're nicer than me.
That was very politically correct.
You're nicer than me.
Yeah, I try to keep it nice, but I'd like to see a little more of that. If Yiner's not as good as a DH, he's better playing defense, whether it's first base or catcher. And Abreu's an older player. Charlie's been hitting on this all year. Get this guy a little bit of rest. Like we saw with Yuli last year. He was better when he got a little more rest, especially when the postseason came around. It's not a shot at Abreu that you just want him to be at his best when he is in the lineup.
Look, Abreu sat up in the coffin in June and put together an 800 OPS for a stretch. Last 20 games through the Rays series, OPS 703. So a bad player the last 3 weeks, but in the lineup every day. If he was 27 years old, you'd justify a day off here or there for an OPS of 700 from an offensive position at first base. Right, the couple times where he did spurt, out of the All-Star break after several days off. Dusty gave him the 3 days off, and he hit a couple home runs in the series after that. So Dusty's just too darn stubborn for his own good. I guess you earn the privilege at his age, at his tenure. It's not like his job is at risk within this season. But tactically, Dusty has never been a highly regarded manager, and we're going to continue to see some of that.